write article review and effectively. So wait, I will share a slide. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So welcome. And so this is a poster that you see. And so tonight we will have postgraduate sharing and how to write literature review effectively. And so who is organized this sharing is actually organized by YOSH Empower by My Financial. It's actually a volunteer, and I'm also as a volunteer YOSH. So this is actually like sukarela lah, program volunteer. So Prof also volunteer to speak to us tonight, and so we need to grateful lah about that. So first, I would like to introduce about YOSH first, and then we will proceed to the sharing. Just a little bit introduction. Okay, and what is YOSH? First, YOSH is Youth of Strength and Happiness. That is a long name for the YOSH, and so short we call it YOSH. And it is a volunteerism unit empowered by My Financial. My Financial is actually a NGO, a big NGO. So YOSH is a volunteerism unit under My Financial. And it is a platform to help and postgraduate students in nurturing well-rounded, holistic individual and who are equipped with a good morals, competitive and well-balanced in all aspects of life, and which emphasize on academics, spirituality, morality, and volunteering. And that is YOSH. And then we have in Malaysia, it is our HQ. And then we have also in neighbor country and Indonesia, and also Egypt, Mesir, and New Zealand, Japan, and Australia and Africa actually. So I think we have participants from New Zealand tonight. After sharing, I think we can kenal each other lah. I think. Okay. Then this is a video you can see.
It's all began with desire to help the others, to give support, to share burden with all in need. We are giving our best just to spark smiles, to spread happiness. And so our journey began, facing all the challenges in days and nights, miles away, across the nation, and even throughout the world. These paths are priceless. We learn online, bring in skills, being independent, and of course, we are leading the generation to the best future. Be part of us. Let's change the world.
YOSH 非常棒。
Alright, there is a video about YOSH. That is our activities and what are we doing. Okay, next. Before we go into the sharing, I would like to introduce our speaker tonight, which is Prof. Dr. Chandrakantan Subramaniam, which is right now Executive Director, Cooperative and Entrepreneurship Development Institute and UUM. And he also get PhD Emergency Management and PGDE in Entrepreneurship at Cambridge University. And then Master in Emergency Response and Planning, UPM. Also Bachelor in Human Resource, UUM. So this is a little bit introduction. I introduce about our speaker. And if I'm not mistaken, Prof also background is from College Sultan Abdul Hamid. Also Sekolah Menengah Sultan Badli Shah Kulim. I think Prof from Kedah, right?
Yeah, I'm a local Kedahan.
Oh, okay. Maybe we can hear Dr. Prof speak in Kedah.
The Kedah dialect, yeah.
Kedah.
Sure can. We can. As it goes, it will come, especially when I start speaking in Malay.
Oh, okay. So tonight, we not so formal, just like santai lah we say. And
Okay, sure.
So I hope our participant already having dinner, so we can more focus and tonight with our sharing. Hopefully, okay. So without any further delay, I would like to invite Prof to proceed the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharul. Okay, I will share my slides now. You see. Oh, yeah. And then you can see the slides now? Can you guys see the slides, Sharul?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's very clear. Okay, a very good evening to...
Yes, Prof.
Thanks. A very good evening to everyone here. It's COVID, but yet the thirst towards knowledge is it's like never ending. We are using multiple ways to share things. I would like to thank YOSH for giving me this opportunity. In fact, I have to mention here that Dr. Raini spoke to me on the 18th, and I was thinking like I have a month to work on this, but it so happened that within 3 days I had to give this. So it's going to be a very santai session. I hope that anybody who has questions, you can always just interject like how you do in the class. So the first thing that I would like to share with you guys is when we talk about literature review, a lot of people get a misconception. So what do a lot of people do, including what I did way back in 2005 when I was doing my doctorate? We used to go and look for journal articles, and then we start reading the journal articles, you know, until when we start in page 1, and then we reach page 20, 25, and then it was like, you know, after giving so long a break from studying, you see your eyes get red, watery, and everything. You don't understand what you wrote, what you read in the first page when you are in the 5th page. And we tend to collect all those sections in literature review, put it back in the Microsoft Word, we paraphrase the sentences, and we think that this is what literature review is. So when I had this experience, because I had to explore it on my own, my supervisor was a pair, male and female, who always likes me to explore things, and then they guide me to do it. And I asked them, why do you do so? They said, learning through the hard way or learning by your own self, you tend to remember the things longer. So that's why the process gets lengthier and lengthier. So this is what they call as a review of literature review. So I was like saying, what is this? Now, what is a review of a literature review? So they told me, Chandra, you have done it wrong. So that actually opened up my mind and wanting to understand what a literature review is all about. Though I've done my doctorate, and then over the period of time when my students were examined in their PhDs, and I too examine people, sometimes we pick up certain things along the way. Am I speaking too fast, or is this okay? Sharul?
Okay, Doctor. Okay.
It's okay. Okay. So along the way, I met a gentleman who actually gave a very good analogy of what is a literature review. So he asked me, he asked my student, what is the latest movie that you have watched? And that particular student mentioned a movie. Let's say today the last movie or the latest movie that we have watched, it is Fast and Furious. So the movie is about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And after you have watched the movie and you are coming back, or the next day I meet you and I ask you, have you watched Fast and Furious? And you say that, yes, I watched it yesterday. It was a nice movie. Hey, can you tell me what is the story all about? Yes, I can. So when you reach that stage, do you tell a story for 2 hours which match the hours that you watched the movie? You would not tell your story for 2 hours. You will synthesize the whole story and tell me within 10, maximum 15 minutes. This is what is literature review. You actually read tons and tons of articles, in the area that you are studying. At the end of the day, you probably will write 40 or 50 pages of the chapter literature review. But you do not rewrite what has been written. You synthesize. So when people ask you what is the difference between summary and a synthesis, I think you should be able to understand better tonight that a summary is you have a 200-word essay, you tend to cut, reduce the number of words and make it 100 words. This is what we were doing during our, higher secondary, especially those Malaysian who were doing SPM in Kefahaman Bahasa Malaysia. This is what we were doing. But now, at a doctorate level or at a master's level, when people say what is a literature review, then you have to have the element of synthesis, which goes back to the story that I told you regarding the movie. Okay, so that's what I would like to start off with when we talk about literature review. Understanding the concepts would help you better to actually choreograph or plan or design your literature review section. So I've been entrusted to share on how to write literature review effectively. Probably tonight, I will be very much skewed to looking at my area of discipline, which will be business management, occupational safety and health. And I had a good view in the afternoon that we have students from various faculties. Try to adapt it to your area of study. If you have any problem, do interject while I am sharing what I have today. So if you look at this quote by Albert Suzanne Yorgi, it says that research is to see what everybody has seen and to think what nobody else have thought. So how do you see what everybody has seen? You see what everybody has seen through your literature review. And how do you think what nobody else have thought? That is the element that always when you say, what is the postgraduate study all about? And you say that postgraduate study is all about critical thinking. So after doing the literature, after searching the literature, synthesizing the literature, then you would be able to use your ability of critical thinking to look at what else that has not been done or has not been taught. That is what you are going to do. You do not want to reinvent the wheel. You want to do something new, which is sensible, which is rational, so that you contribute to the body of knowledge. That's why a lot of examiners or your supervisor ask you, what is the gap that you are addressing? The gap is what nobody else has taught. This is very, very critical for the doctoral students. So in a nutshell, what is a literature review? It's a piece of a discursive prose. What do you mean by discursive prose here is, it's not by intuition. You do not come up with idea. You don't pluck your variables from a thin air. It's all about justifying, arguing, and rationalizing the concept that you are going to study. So it says that it's not a list of things that describes or summarizes one literature after another. Sometimes when we examine PhD students, we look at the literature review. The first paragraph says, according to Ahmad 2019, he has said blah, blah, blah. And then you have the next paragraph, according to Abu, he stressed that blah, blah, blah. And the next paragraph, you go and say, according to Subramaniam, or according to Tan, it says that blah, blah, blah. That is not a literature review. It is summarizing one piece of literature after another. So that is actually a very, very bad sign that you see when every paragraph starts with the researcher's name. Which means that what have you done? You are actually taking what people have done and pasting it back on your literature. Okay. You should organize your literature review into sections. And you should look at the themes, or you should identify the trends, or you should be able to identify the theories that has been used in your area of study. So you are not going to list all the materials that are published, but you are going to synthesize. What is synthesize? I told you just now. And you evaluate it according to the concept of your thesis, or in other words, you are trying to answer your research question. Okay, the analogy is like, the literature review is like seeds that will grow your investigation from previous ones that came before it. But you want to make sure that the plant that you are growing should be better than what people have grown before. If you can grow a plant that is better than what people have grew before, then how do you contribute to the body of knowledge? You should also ask yourself, if you are in the quantitative study, you have hypotheses that you want to answer. What if all your hypotheses are rejected? Does it mean that you have contributed to the body of knowledge? Some people argue, some researchers argue, oh, it is also a contribution to the body of knowledge, because you have found it to be contradicting from others, and you justify why the contradiction happens. But if you have 10 variables, and out of your 10 variables, you have 4 which are not significant, which are rejected, well, that is accepted. But what if all 10 are not accepted? All 10 are rejected. So it goes back to a concept that we call, there is an error in conceptualizing. Where does this error in conceptualization starts? The error in your conceptualization starts from your literature. If you don't read good articles, if you don't get articles from a journal that has high standings. Now we talk about Web of Science, we talk about Scopus. Even within Scopus, there are lots and lots of paid journals. Well, it's good that you get a Scopus paper in a paid journal from a start, yes. But when you want to refer, when you want to look at, you should look at those top-notch papers. Why? Because you don't want to make an error on conceptualization. So when you don't want to make an error on conceptualization, these papers that are rigorously reviewed will give you a better hold of stuff. So that's why you need to make sure that the seeds that you are planting should yield better plants than the previous ones that others planted. So that's why we primarily look at peer-reviewed and refereed journal. So that's where you go into the Q1, Q2, Q3, Web of Science. Some business school looks at the ABDS list. You know, they have the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. All right. So through this literature review, what do you get actually? It provides you a rationale for your investigation. It provides you a rationale for the investigations from the angle of first the research design. What research design did they use? Was the research design the best research design? This is where you need to review that article better or more with critically. All right. You want to take instruments. I do see some people who take instruments, even at doctoral level, from a doctoral thesis. I think this is not correct because the doctoral thesis is an unpublished material. If somebody else's doctoral thesis has been published in a journal article, then you can take it because it has gone through the peer review process. At a doctoral thesis, yes, they go through a viva. You only have, some places you have 2 examiners, one internal, one external. In some places they have more than 2. Some places they have 3 examiners. But in a journal, you do not know whose paper you are reviewing. But in viva, you know who's, you're looking at that person face to face. So the rigorousness is more in the journal article. That's why it gets into publication because you always have the chief editor, associate editors, and then section editors, and then you have the reviewers who give you comment. Some will have 3 reviewers, 4 reviewers. It will take a longer process. So when you look at this, you will find instruments for those doing quantitative study. You look at instruments, your questionnaire. How long have they been used? How widely they have been used? What is their internal consistency value? If older paper, you look at the Cronbach alpha value. Recent papers, you don't see much of Cronbach alpha, but you will be looking at composite reliability. So these are the values that will tell you how strong is the instrument. Okay, you may take the instrument and adopt it 100% to yourself, but some people need to do some minor revision. That's where we have the adaptation. So literature review is the source that you get. Some good journal articles have their items either in their paper, in one of the tables, especially when you talk about validity, or they have the items in the appendices at the back of the paper after the, the references. So it's very good that you get these instruments because you cannot go wrong when you use instruments that has been widely used, okay, which are being published in good journal. Because I think you go back to the concept of validity. Validity, you want to make sure that you are measuring what is supposed to be measured. You know, so that's the other advantage of the literature review. Next is the methods of data collection. There are many methods of data collection today. The most popular today is always an online data collection method. An online data collection method, how rigorous is the online data collection method? How certain that you know the person who responded is the appropriate person that can respond to the items that you have. Traditionally, we were moving from one place to another, giving hard copy questionnaires. So now we can look at the trends. When you are giving a questionnaire to a person, you know who is responding. But when you do online data survey or use monkey survey for that matter, this is where sometimes we have this problem that we say, in Bahasa Malaysia, we say tangkap muat. It's our crazy and Morgan says, oh, you need 220 samples. So you just send it over to people. Is that the right way? What are the recommendations? What are the remedies? What are the procedures? What are the process that you need to undertake to ensure that your data is actually responded by the right person, so that the validity of the item, validity of the responses are high? These are written in the literature review. So you can always read from the literature review. The next thing you want to look at is at the analysis. There is always an argument today. If you read, I think you may agree with me. There's always an argument. Some people say use SPSS. Some people say no, you should go and look at structural equation modeling. So you use AMOS or you use Lizrel. Or some people say no, PLS is easy, everything at the click. Not as tedious as AMOS. No, you got to look at the literature review and see why did they use these techniques. There is always a justification. Okay, I do see people say, oh, I have a small sample size, so I am using PLS. So my question is, who asked you to look at a very small sample size? Is your sample size very small? Why did you do a quantitative study? You should have done a qualitative study. So all these can only be answered when you read other people's literature and understand what analysis has been used. And finally, it's about concluding your findings. But when you go through this, you must always remember, even though it is a Q1 top-notch paper that has a H index of, talk about 200, 300, H index for that particular jet. But you still, because you are the researcher, you still have to evaluate whether what is written is accurate or not. You need to. So some people will just ask me, sir, I am just starting my PhD. I am nobody. How am I going to evaluate some professors' work outside there? Well, professors are also out there making errors. We can't say they have absolute absolute truth out there. They make errors too, whether known or unknown. So this is how we ensure that the knowledge grows. So you need to look at whether they're accurate or not. Why or why not? Okay, I'll give you an example. When I was doing my doctoral studies, I found fatter people to run faster than thinner people. But this doesn't make sense. If you look at it logically, thinner people should be running faster than fatter people. But I failed to understand the literature well. You know, I did publish, but later I found out that you should not be taking their weight, but you should be looking at another concept which you call as your fat-free weight and your fat weight. So on simple term, your fat weight is how many spare tires do you have at your hip. That should be measured, not the weight. So this is where we want to look at how accurate have previous researchers interpreted the data. You know, along the way we understand. I have read so many papers in occupational safety and health. Those in the business field, you will know that there is a theory which we call it as social exchange theory. Okay, so it says that social exchange theory here says there is always a reciprocity between two parties. So if I smile at you, you smile at me. That's a positive reciprocity. If I stare at you, you stare back at me. There is a negative reciprocity. It happens. Even at home, go back and try with your wife. Try smiling at her. She will smile back to you. Or you try shouting at her. Probably you may get a shout or you may get a whack from things that is there in the kitchen. So this is logic. But I was publishing some papers because I was reading from other people that social exchange theory can be used to look at why people comply to safety at work. There are some people who criticize my work, especially the reviewers, and I wrote back to them. That's what we call as rebuttal, rebuttaling their critiques. At one point, which we took about a year arguing about this, at one point, I do not know who was the reviewer, but I know it is a UK-based journal, International Journal of Human Resource Management. And that reviewer said, please make some sense. Do you think just because your immediate boss scolds you, you are going to put your hand into a machine and injure yourself? I say, I won't. So that's why he says, social exchange theory will not work. When I was saying, hey, most of the paper in good journals are using social exchange theory, especially in safety and health. Then he says, it's about time that we enlighten people that this is not accurate anymore. So, okay, I came back, I was working with my co-author, and then we found this theory by Bandura, which talks about self-efficacy theory. So all those interventions actually develop the employee's self-efficacy so that he knows the importance to comply to safety at work. So these are the things that we learn along the line. It has been years people publishing, but are they accurate? That's the job that we do when we do literature review. We need to be a bit bold at this stage. So defining a literature review, it is a recap of important information, a synthesis. It's not a summary, but it's a synthesis. It might give a new interpretation of old material. It combines new with old interpretation. Like the example I gave you about social exchange theory and self-efficacy theory. Or it might trace the intellectual progression of the field, including major debates. An example, those doing study in the area of organizational behavior. You know that these two authors are very popular when you study about job performance. We talk about Bauman and Motovidlo. Bauman and Motovidlo says job performance has two facets. One is the task performance itself. The second one is contextual performance. But they started this way back in 1960 trying to tell people, please look at this. It's not all about productivity. But people have been studying job performance, productivity. How much or how many units can they produce? That is job productivity. But these guys came up to explain. For example, job performance. Today, I am sharing with you guys, and Sharul just now was saying that YOSH is a non-profit organization doing charity work. Yes. Isn't this my performance when I want to share with you guys? But what moves me to share? Because at the time that I wanted to get knowledge, I didn't have sharing sessions like this. We have to go travel one place to another to ask some people. But I am not producing any PhD students here. None of you in this group is my student. But it is not past performance. This is what Bowman and Motto Widlow has been saying. So they say that look at the two things. Past performance is important, but at the same time, you need to look at the contextual performance. So that's how the field organizational citizenship behavior came into the picture to become something popular. So from Bowman and Motto Widlow, a lot of people have benefited, including the area that I am doing study. We look at safety performance or safety behavior, which has compliance, wajib, which is your task performance. You need to wear your helmet, you need to wear your gloves, you need to follow the rules and regulations. At the same time, there is safety participation. If there is what you call people doing some campaign, you have the liberty to join or not to join. Whether you want to look at the posters or not, you are not forced to look at the posters, but you go and look at the posters because you feel that you need to know so that you don't injure yourself and you don't become the reason why someone else gets injury at your workplace. So this is actually a storyline. So if you write your literature review, you cannot go and say immediately, according to Bowman and Motto Widlow, job performance has task performance and contextual performance. You should be able to tell the story. You would ask me, yeah, my examiner is an expert in that area. He should know about it. Why must I explain it to him? But actually, the examiner only examines your thesis, but there are so many people who will be reading your work. When they read your work, do you think that they know? Or they don't even know what Bowman and Motto Widlow say? So they will start to copy your work and put into their thesis. And that is how we start to produce half-past-6 graduates who do not go to the roots. So as a doctoral student, you need to go to the roots. You need to know how the intellectual progression of that field happened. You need to know the evolution of it. That's how you become an expert in that particular area. And depending on the situation, sometimes we need to evaluate source and advise the readers on most pertinent or most relevant issues. There are a lot of issues that are new issues because you want to have a gap. You want to address a gap in the area of that you want to study. Sometimes you may find that the area that you want to study, there is not many papers. There is a few papers. They are very new areas. If we talk about, I think Green HRM has a lot. If you talk about HR analytics in human resource, you will find that very, very minimal studies are there. So you need to dive into other areas that are very close to analytics. You can't say HR analytics, but what is HR analytics? You're using HR indicators to make decisions. So you may go into other areas in entrepreneurship or business areas to understand that concept. So that is what will come into your literature review to support. People study about organizational citizenship behavior. People in my area started studying about safety citizenship behavior. It is a concept that has been adapted. So if you go and look for articles, you only have 10 articles. So can you go and tell your professor or your supervisor saying that I only have 10 articles, so can I do a literature review based on these 10 articles? No, you should be able to go and read about organizational citizenship behavior because the concept is the same. It's only the setting that is different. So that is what is meant by sometimes you need to evaluate the source and everything. The other thing is an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. You would have heard this. Oh, the guru's name must appear. The guru in these areas' name must appear. How do you know if that particular person is a guru or not? When you start reading good articles, you will see these names keep on appearing. These are the people that have been doing things in that discipline for a long period of time. If you are studying about adoption, you talk about IT adoption. You cannot run from Viswanath Venkatesh's work. If you are doing an area, if you are studying about OCB, organizational citizenship behavior, you cannot run away from Potsakov. I'm sorry to the others who are in different areas because I only know the scholars in my area. So I hope you don't mind about it. Now, if you study about safety and health, then names like Zoha, Cox and Cheney, Mearns and Flynn, these names must appear in your thesis. It's not a must appear because just to appear, because they have written all those seminal work. So that's how literature review helps you. It serves as a foundation in your study, and it will give you the knowledge and idea that has been established in your area of investigation. If you don't do a good literature review, you may end up doing something that people already have been doing. And the worst part is you find out about it after your data collection, which is you have to go back to your drawing board. You also look at the strength and the weaknesses of the studies. Okay, we need to pick up the strength of the studies and improve on them, and we need to look at how to overcome the weaknesses of these studies. For example, if we do a study on leadership, okay, we ask the subordinate to evaluate themselves, and we ask the students, the subordinates to rate their perception on their leader. We have the single source bias. I think you guys know about it. We talk about single source bias here is common method variance. So sometimes when we look, the results are not as expected, probably because of the single method variance. So how are we going to improve on it? Are we going to use a paired response? Are we going to have an experimental design? These are the things that from your literature review you will pick up and try to improve, as what I said before. So literature review also guides your research objective, your problem statement, or your background study. Okay, literature review is not a descriptive list of materials available or a set of summaries. Some of us write literature review, read a lot of things. Some are not relevant to you, but you want to put their list, their reference in your reference list, just to show that I have read this much of papers. So you must understand the difference between what is a reference and what is a bibliography. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between reference and bibliography? Because it's when you do online lecture, if you talk alone in front of the laptop, you have a kind of a funny feeling. Anyone there who wants to respond? What is the difference between reference and a bibliography? Okay. I think probably. Yeah, please.
Professor, bibliography is something that we read, and whereas references are the statement which when we cite something in our text, so we'll have the name of the author, the year at the back of our papers.
Excellent, excellent. That's the thing. Bibliography is you read that particular material, but you have not cited in your work. Reference are those cited in your work. So sometimes we read certain things and those things are not cited in our work. So we can't use the word rugi. No way. So that's why you see PhD or master's thesis, they only have a reference section. They do not have bibliography section. Bibliography usually books have it. So you need to know about that. Thank you very much for responding this now. So these are some of the things that when we talk about what is a good literature review and what is a poor literature review. So synthesis must be there. They are not annotated bibliography. If I may speak in Malay, sikit-sikit buka apa ni? Open inverted comma, close inverted comma, and then give the page number and the year. Bibliographies is not annotated bibliographies. The other thing is a critical evaluation means good literature review. Kalau you are only describing things is a poor literature review. You have to have the breadth and the depth in the things that you're investigating, not narrow and shallow. What do you mean by narrow and shallow? Oh, so and so, Ali and Abu 2012 did a study looking at how compensation has influence on job performance. The study found that compensation has a very strong relationship with job performance among manufacturing employees. Period. Finish. Then you move on. That is a very, very poor literature review. Please tell me why that happened. By them receiving the money, more higher salary, that's why they perform better. I need to know, why did they do so? There must be a reason. So that is what is meant by narrow and shallow. A good literature review has clarity and very concise. A poor literature review is confusing and long-winded. If you yourself don't like your literature review, then that is actually a poor literature review. So you have to, on the name of fairness, you need to be fair to your examiners too. Because sometimes the literature review section is about 60, 70 pages. You read 3 pages, you go and get a cup of coffee. You read another 3 pages, you go and look for some cookies or biscuit. You read another 3 pages, then you go and look for some chocolates. You're actually giving a very bad time to your examiner to add calorie and calorie. So a good literature review will be just very short, precise, the ideas are presented to you crystal clear. Another element of a good literature review is it uses rigorous and very consistent in their method of how do you present the idea. The other one is, poor one is constructed in an arbitrary way. I mean, you do it on your own way. This is how I want to do my literature. Okay, these are some tips. It has to be focused. Okay, only ideas that is related to your study. Don't go and tell other things, because this is not a textbook. I read some thesis, literature review, underpinning theory. They explain 10 to 12 theories. Finally, in one paragraph, the candidate says, this study adapts this particular theory. So I asked them, why are you wasting my time asking me to read all the other theories? If I read to know, then I will go and look for a book that talks about theories in organization behavior, theories in human resource management. But please don't write everything in your chapter 2. And why do you write? I mean, I'm not saying you, it's not good. Why do they write? Actually, they want to make up the pages. So that's why it has to be very, very, very focused. That's why we also say it's very concise, because space. That's why you see now most of the universities have already started saying that your thesis should not exceed 60,000 words or 80,000 words. I throw this question back to you. If let's say the whole thesis is 100 pages, your chapter 1 is 10 pages, your chapter 2 is 50 pages, chapter 3, 4, 5 makes to another 40 pages. That means each gets about 15 pages. Do you think this is fair? Because what we are interested in is, how did you do the study? How was the analysis done and what was found? But you don't give them much emphasis, but you give them a lot of the expensive emphasis on literature review, and you take up literature review takes up the biggest chunk of your thesis, which is actually it's not good. It should be the ratio should be very close to each other. You shouldn't be so much into that. And some people would like to put so much of appendices to make the thesis thick and thicker. The other thing, it has to be logic. You need to bring the idea one to another. If you're talking about job performance, you need to introduce Burman motto vidlo, move the story, how it was seen, only the task performance, why the need of looking at contextual performance came. You bring the story. So that is what is meant by the flow must be logical, no hanging ideas, very integrative. Okay, you should be able to say that what commonalities does all the studies share. I believe there is people in this group who are studying about the big 5 personalities: conscientiousness, agreeableness, emotional stability, openness to experience, extraversion. You can see that most of the studies say that the consistent predictor is conscientiousness. So these are the commonalities that you find in most of the studies. So you do not repeat every study that conscientiousness was significant in the next paragraph, rather than saying that you bring them all and explain which is the consistent predictor of job performance. Okay, it should be current. Okay, it's written here, review should focus on work being done on the cutting edge of your topic. So a lot of people say, it's a rule of thumb, the last 5 years, recent 5 years papers. Okay, it's a double-edged sword question. Why do you need to have the latest 5 years? Because you want to know what is the recent thing that you have done on it. You don't want to be left behind. Some of us write, and I say some of us, it includes me, we write there recently, or we say that lately, lately manufacturing sector has been the focus in job performance studies. In bracket, you write there Parasuraman 2010. What is lately in 2010 when we are in 2020? When you use the word recently, lately, it should not be more than 5 years. Some say even 2 years. That's the first point of it. because you want to look at the recency of that area. But at the same time, you must know that certain areas do not get that much of publication in the last 5 years. So you need to give some articles that are more than 5 years. It is acceptable. And sometimes certain things, you need to go back to 1970s, 1960s. You want to know because how the root started. So that's why I say sometimes when we means examiner, when we examine, the benefit of the doubt is at the student. So we need to look at the student and ask, your work doesn't have any reason. When you say that doesn't have any reason, you should be able to demonstrate that the candidate has missed very recent papers. So this is a tip to you guys outside there. When your examiners or anybody asks you, you have not included any recent papers, so you should very tactfully ask them, can I know which papers that I missed? That shows how confident you are in your area. I mean, you know all these recent papers. I believe you guys are good in IT. Some of my friends do that. They just, in that particular discipline, they have something that they click that any recent paper in that area, they get notified. So you start reading those papers. It allows you to actually bring in old and new knowledge to be combined and allows you to actually explore more and more knowledge before you come to what you want to do. That is allowed. Information seeking. How do you actually go and look for your articles? Probably in this group, if I say you already nod your head and say, yes, I know. Those days during my time, we used to go and look for an index card, look for a journal article, and then photocopy it, bring it back. I do not know if you have experience, but you should experience everything. I did also get articles from microfilm. It's a very, very big projector. They put strips of film and then you view it, you enlarge, and then you photocopy it to the machine. One piece, when I was studying, it was 50 cents. If I'm mistaken. It's not 7 cents like how we photocopy. But today, everything is at your fingertip. You do not even need to go to library. A lot of universities today are suffering. We don't even buy books anymore. Publishers are finding it very difficult. Libraries, like where I am, UUM, we have a 5-story library, but we need to close a few floors during COVID and everything so that we can reduce the operational cost, because people rarely go to library because the library is just in front of you. You look for the article needs to be paid, then you copy the DUI, paste it in SCI Hub, you get the article for free. So you have everything there. So you need to decide what articles that you need to look. And then you, the other thing is it allows you to critically appraise the study so that you can identify unbiased and valid studies. You can do that. So where do you find the article? These are everything that I cited that we used to do it. You have a citation index. You go into Scopus, you go into EBSCOhost, some of you go into ProQuest. So I just put in some online database list in UUM library. All this, we have the ACM Digital Library, Bernama, CCH Online, Cambridge, and all these, any university you go, all the librarians will subscribe to this. Okay? You have electronic journals, you have printed journals. Now, printed journals is the thick that you have in hard copy. You have books, you have e-theses, you have all those internet sources that you use, Google Scholar, that and this, and other sources that you use. Today, I think information seeking is not an issue anymore. Any of you here say that information seeking is a problem, then I think you have a problem to solve. Today it's very fast. While you tell your supervisor now, your supervisor says, have you read this paper? Within 3 minutes, you can download the PDF into your laptop or even your phone and say, give me 2 days, I will give you a synthesis on what this article is talking all about. So I think this is not an issue today. So when you read an article, okay, this slide and the next slide, I'm going to talk to you about when you read an article. When you read your article from your first page to the 20th page, you tend to forget what was written in the first page. You can't recall what was written in the third page. So this stresses you out. So I don't have it here, but you can always communicate with me and everything. We have this, I think your supervisors also have, an Excel format that we say that what you call as a literature matrix. So why don't I show you this also, a literature matrix. One moment. It should be here. Can you see this Excel format?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can look at this. This is article number 1. You have the journal title, year, authors, country, all your measurement and everything. You only have, you do this. The first paper is done, then you go to the second paper. You go to the third paper. So when you do that, what you are actually reading is these things. You're looking at what other people have done, said about the topic, what theories they have addressed, to the research problem, what previous research exists, are the findings of the previous research consistent, or do the studies disagree with the previous findings? Are there flaws in the body of existing research that can be remedied? That is the remedy that you are going to contribute to the body of knowledge. So this is something very important. You just look at an article, a journal article, take the journal article, you read very fast. So you look at the objective of the research. Last time I used to highlight, then only I understood about this. You don't highlight, you copy and paste verbatim into the Excel table that I said just now. You look at the theoretical rationale, why the study was done, what was the variable selected, copy, paste. Copy and paste the research design and sampling. Copy and paste the measures. I mean, you do not need to copy and paste each and every item, the source of the item. And what procedures were used, what are the analysis used, what was the finding. So when you copy and paste verbatim, try to have it as short as possible. And you look at what are the inferences and application made by the authors. For example, I was telling you just now, I found fatter people running faster than thinner people. Then I started to read about something that people talk about, kinestic, if I'm not mistaken. It was all about aerobic and anaerobic in human anatomy. Then I found the fat weight and the fat-free weight that I was telling you just now. Then I used that inferences and to support my finding. And actually, there was a study that was done among the military. So I was doing a study among the firefighters. The firefighters are heavy, huge, but actually they have trainings every evening, physical training. They have to play badminton or sepak takraw during the break. That's why you see the shutters of the fire station are closed in the afternoon. They have to jog. That makes them fit. They are heavy, but they are fit. They have less fat weight. This is what the army studies found. So I use those inferences in my study. That's what will happen to you. These are the things that when you find why this is significant, why is this not significant. Sometimes we have a theoretical reason. Sometimes we have a methodological reason. Sometimes we have a conceptual reason. Pick this, put it. We will think about it, whether it is practical or not practical to your study when you reach chapter 5. At this moment, you cannot say, never mind, I don't take. When you reach and you say, oh my God, I remember somewhere I read something like this. If you have the time, you want to read back all the 300 articles that you read, please do so. If you don't have the time, please plug this and put it while you are doing your literature review. Because you run through this Excel spreadsheet, you will be able to. Okay? Right. Moving on. So again, why literature review? You see, you will be able to put the context of your contribution. And then you will be able to describe the relationship of each of the variable because you need to develop your hypothesis. You need to identify new ways to interpret or shed light on any gaps of the previous system. This comes from your literature review. Sometimes there are conflicts. People's findings are different. So literature review again helps. You also, the important thing, you want to identify areas of prior scholarship to prevent duplication of effort. I do not know whether you have heard these story, scary stories. I have a friend that brought his daughter back to Malaysia because after her proposal defense was done, she found that there is already a similar study of what she is doing has already been published. That's why it's very important when you're doing your doctoral study especially, you can share what you're doing at a very surface area. It's not that you can put ilmu because you don't want your idea to be kidnapped. So that's where literature review helps. You can have another PhD thesis. It's not published, it's not a big issue. But don't have anybody publishing similar thing that you do. Because some people will just pick it up, they don't do PhD, but they will just do a very quick data collection and publish it. So that's where you have to be extra careful. Okay, literature review also points the way forward for further research. Places one original work in the context of existing literature. So you need to be able to do literature review because you want to avoid these things. You don't want these things to happen to you. So if you do a good literature review, you will try to eliminate all these problems that will arise if you don't do a good literature review. Okay, these are also the same things that I just want to share quickly. A very handy guide. You will know topics, you will know who did what, an overview or acts as a stepping stone for your research. You're using this, okay, I know that A is related to B. How do you know? Previous studies have done it. Previous studies have proven A is related to B. So that's also another significant contribution of literature review. Sometimes it also gives you a solid background for a research investigation. I believe more is on newspaper statistics, but literature review from journal articles also give you some good background. Up to date, current in the field. That's why some people say even after you submit for your Viva, you should not stop reading because questions can come. So at that moment, you already submitted, you have the benefit of the doubt, but during the Viva, you can explain it verbally to them. Okay. Depth and breadth of the literature review emphasizes the credibility of the writer in his or her field. The moment you finish, you are known as an expert. When they come and ask you, when you want to talk, you cannot just talk about your study. You have to talk about what other people have done and how is your study different. So that's how it shows your credibility in understanding that particular aspect of knowledge. Okay, it gives you a critical look at facts. You don't look things in a very straightforward manner. You look because you have been reading so much. Okay, it demonstrates the relevance of the research. Okay, I think this is also all just like reading materials. What a literature review is done. I think I want to talk about how. Okay, how a literature review is done. I think you're more interested into this. It has to have an introduction. A literature review section will have an introduction, gives a quick idea of the topic of the literature review, set the themes, and you provide the reader with the scale or structure of the review, kind of a map. This is an example how you write an introduction in the literature review. So you say that this chapter presents the theoretical literature on peak performance that served as a foundation for the study. So you want to tell them what has been done and what needs to be done. So you say that what has been done. The chapter begins with a historical review of the experimental and quasi-experimental research that examine the foundation of the development of field theory from its earliest form in 1950s through to the present. So you're going to talk about the theory from 1950s until today, what has been done. Then you say what happens in the next section. The next section there explores the complex aspect of field theory, introducing and examining the primary orientation of mastery, team dynamics, and team performance. This is just an example. Then you come on going say that the chapter also examines the ongoing debate in team performance literature regarding the relationship between team member resources, team structure, and team performance. And then finally, the chapter examines the team member resources and team structure implications on field theory and concludes it with the developmental perspective of team performance. Why we keep on talking about theory in these two paragraphs? Because this is a PhD work. This is a sample of a PhD work. So you want to tell that there is theoretical contribution. So this study contributes to the field theory. So how is it contributing? So you're saying section 1 is this, section 2 is this, section 3. So when I start reading, I already know that what I am going to get in this particular chapter. Then I have to go and look at the body of the literature review. So what does body contain of discussion of sources, and it's organized either chronologically. That means how the knowledge was started until what is happened today. It can be chronologically. Or it can be thematically. You want to look at certain themes, individual. Or you want to look at organizational. You want to look at themes. What are the themes that you want to look at? Theme, T-H-E-M-E-S, but it's now themes, T-E-A-M-S. So what level? Are you looking at the unit of analysis? So you need to decide. Or you want to talk about methodologically, how it has been improved. So that's, everybody have their own way of putting it, because your study is always different than other people's study. Then how are you going to organize your key points? That is the body of your review. So your body of the review depends on how you are going to choreograph. It's like a movie that you're going to do. How are you going to start? How are you going to put the point through? How are you going to argue the point? And how are you going to nail the point to the reader? That is in the body. And at postgraduate level, it's not descriptive anymore. As I said, A is related to B. No. A is related to B, but why? This was, for example, possible reasons for similarities or differences between studies are considered rather than merely identifying them. We cannot be saying the findings are contradicting with the previous findings by etc., etc., etc. Yes, contradicting. Why are they contradicting? Why are they not the same? Because they're using the same underpinning theory. Is it because of the methodology? Is it because of the respondents? What is it because? So you need to look at that. That will be in the content of your body of the literature. So this is how you organize. You have to look at it. How will you present? You have to decide. You can create an organizational method to focus on this section further. So to help you a bit, you can look at it like, are you going to look at the review from chronological or by publication or by trend, positive relationship, then negative relationship, then non-significant relationship. So because you will know what type of literature that you have got. Or are you going to go into themes? You're going to look at thematic, look at team member resources, only talk about team member resources. Then you talk about what you call team structure. Or are you going to talk about job performance, and then you talk about task performance, and then you talk about contextual performance. This again, it differs from one person to another. Some people would want to talk from a methodological aspect, looking at quantitative, and some people study qualitative and then experimental design. Even in qualitative, are they using ethnography, case study? Are they going into very focused focus group interview? So you will know after you get that. And some people also look at the questions, okay, that are given. When you have the introduction, when you have the body, you should be able to conclude. This is the real gist of it. This is the beauty of the literature. So what have you drawn from reviewing the literature so far? Where might the discussion proceed? Where is the discussion going now? And at the conclusion, you need to sum up the main findings of your research into the literature. How is your study different than what people have done? So literature review talks about two things. What has been done, that's what people have done. What needs to be done, that's where you're going to show what is your study all about and how is it different than other people. So your findings can be related to the aims of the study that you're proposing to do. So, so the reader is thus provided with a coherent background of the current study. So I know the introduction, what am I expecting, then I go into the body, I look at the synthesis that has been presented. Finally, you conclude and tell me, these are the things that you are going to do, and these are the gaps that you're going to address. So that's how a good literature review would be structured. Okay. You have the problem formulation. As I told you again, the literature search, find the literature, do some data evaluation, look at the literatures that are related to you, and then finally analyze and interpret the articles that you have found, the important findings, what you have found in that literature. One precaution that you need to always look at is to keep your quotations at minimum as possible, the open and close inverted comma. So whenever you have a quotation, you must have the page number and the paragraph numbers. If you miss, you will be found guilty of plagiarism. Okay, so you need to know a bit about plagiarism when you talk about literature review. We are coming to an end, and then probably I'll open up a few minutes for questions so I can address whatever questions there is if it's beyond my knowledge. You rewrite someone's script without quoting. You write someone else's script as if it is your own. This is plagiarism. It's all serious crime. Cut and paste internet material. Publishing someone else's result without permission. Producing someone else's figure or table without quoting the source. So How do you avoid these? Is you do your literature metrics, as I told you, the Excel table is now, and then you write on your own words. But when you write on your own words, please cite them because these studies were from them. What we do is the magic mantra, take the exact word, change 3 out of 10. So automatically you will not be detected by turning in. But it's not as easy as you say because a lot of people will be doing that. So you may end up having the same sentence probably. So that's why you need to cite whatever word that you have referred. So avoid plagiarism and learn to paraphrase to be safe. So I just want to end this presentation with these 2 quotes. They say that the difference between literature and journalism is that journalism is unreadable. People, sometimes misquoted. When you read, you don't understand. Is it a true fact and everything? Sometimes after a few days, you find I didn't say this and everything. But at least we read that. But literature is not read. Most of us like to take a very fast way of it, try to copy and paste. You don't want to look at the development. So we don't even, we read literature just because we are doing our doctorate. But actually, ideal situation, any academician should be reading whatever latest in that area so that they keep abreast with the latest trend development, the knowledge, methodology, analysis, etc. This is quite straightforward. Is a bad review, a bad literature review is like baking a cake with all the best ingredients and having someone sit on it. They don't do it because you have all the reviews, but you have all the articles, but you don't do it. So with that, I think I end my session about 5 minutes before time. So probably Saiful, there are some of them who has some questions and everything to ask. So they are always free to ask me if I could answer them.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Right now, we open question Q&A session. So, any questions from participants?
Thank you so much, sir. We are much thankful for you for your time and for the organizer of this session. Sir, I have one suggestion that if you could please arrange a session of using the software for literature review, it would be much better. Like Mendeley and EndNote, etc.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, I take that point. I think I have a colleague of mine, probably I'll talk to Sharul about this, who does a lot of Mendeley training. Is technologist Dr. Madhivanan in UUM. I think that's very helpful. He's a trainer that's been appointed by Mendeley, so probably that's a good idea because it helps a lot of citation, referencing work. So I mean, the organizers probably I'll take that offline with them to introduce the candidate to them. Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Okay, I think it's a good idea. So maybe we will consider for the future program. Any questions?
Any other questions? Probably the others you can feel free to ask.
Hello,
Yeah.
Prof. Could you please show again the literature metrics?
Oh, literature metrics. One moment. But this is not a typical literature metrics. This is let me share 1 moment. Presenting now, entire screen. Share. Yeah. There are a lot of people. Can you see? Can you guys have a look at it? Hello.
Yes, we
Yes.
can see. Yes.
We can.
So this is, I have seen a few, but to me, I find this to be comprehensive. Like you get a general title, what year the article was published, who are the authors, which country was the study done, what are the independent variables, what are the measurements used. You see, it says Heckman and Oldham, 1980, 6 items. The alpha is 0.79. Everything is there. Then what is the dependent variable? And then what is the dependent variable measure? They look at mediating and moderating variable. What is the measurement in the mediating, moderating variable? Methodology, how many people sample, what sampling technique. Then these are the hypotheses. What was the finding? Very short, you see, asterisk, 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 non-significant, non-significant. Then what was the underpinning theory used? What was in the summary and discussion? That's it. So you keep on adding and adding and adding. So this is the thing that you can use. You guys get it?
Get it. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure, sure, sure. Any other
Okay, last
questions?
question, I think.
Prof, can I ask you?
Sure, sure.
Someone told me that it's better when you do your LR, you use this question as a guide. So what do you think?
Okay, you can use your research question because when you do your literature review, you're interested to answer your research question. So therefore, it is actually looking at the relationship. You're quantitative. You're looking at the relationship with the antecedent and the outcome. So that's the same thing that you guide, you tell people what has been done. Then you have to prove that A is related to B because your research question says that how is A related to B, right? Easy, yeah? You say that, so that is the same philosophy that you use to develop your literature review. Because you cannot run away because your research is all about answering your research question. If you don't answer your research question on chapter 5, then there's no tie-in of the particular thesis. It's like the whole thing is like a story that is not related.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
And I used to use my research question as a guide, and I think it's more focused.
Yes,
And I
it does.
used to when I search and read about literature review.
Sure. That should be the principle. You follow that.
Thank you, Prof.
You're welcome.
Okay, there is a question in chat box. We read it. Hi, Prof. Is there any suitable
I'm trying to answer.
suggested for LR chapter?
Okay. Okay. Suitable suggested page number. There's no mantra there. We talk about exhaustiveness. In Bahasa Malaysia kita cakap tepu, saturation point. When you put sugar into a water and you stir the sugar, you want to dilute the sugar, you keep on putting until one stage the sugar will not dilute. So that's the same thing that you do in your literature review. So how do you know it is saturated? When you read, the same thing comes up. The same relationship comes up. That means you have already reached your maximum level of saturation point. So when you write, then you write all those things in a synthesis. So you don't have a mantra. So probably if you want something, but this is off record lah, probably your literature review should be a quarter of the thesis. A quarter, yes. Or yeah, quarter should be okay. I find that there's another question also there, Sharula. How to differentiate between literature review, chapter 2, and discussion. Literature review is all about before doing your study, your basic. Discussion chapter is what you have found. So you justify, you rational, you tell people why your findings is that. That's chapter 5. Chapter 2, you are telling what people have done. That's it. And what you are going to do. I think the Major Jimmy, my old good friend, asked, is it a benchmark as a guide? Yes, it's just a guide. Some people have shorter, some people have longer. This one is a very pessimistic approach because you don't want to miss everything. So you want to keep everything. How many database Google Scholar Dimension need to refer for literature review? I cannot understand this question clearly. How many database need to refer for literature review? No, you do not need to. Oh, okay. It's not that as many as possible, but make sure you look for those that have credential. That has credential, because some articles you can just see, sometimes they're not even peer reviewed. So this is where you may get yourself trapped. You get something, the conceptualization is wrong, then you go and do a study, you don't find your results to be significant. That's a problem. Yeah. So Charul, back to you. Okay, if we don't want to have a moderator and mediator for PhD level, how to convince the examiner during the Viva? Having a moderator or a mediator is not something that is necessary. What is necessary is what is new in your study. So you convince the examiner by highlighting the gap. You can have an independent and dependent variables that, and then probably this has been done quantitatively during field experiment questionnaire, but you are going to do it in experimental design. Convince the examiner and say why there is a need to do in experimental design. What is the weaknesses of the previous approaches or the previous methodology that has been using questionnaire? So that should be able to examine to convince the examiner, because a moderator or a mediator is not a must. The only thing people ask you, life is not straightforward. Life is always full of uncertainty. So that's where the moderator and the mediator comes in to explain the uncertainties. Is that mean using literature metrics we can start synthesizing, analyze? I mean the analysis used. When you use the literature metric, you read that particular line and then you come up with your sentence. That's what we mean as synthesizing. And you look at every line of it, and then you can collect all these articles and come to something in common. That is the usage of the literature metrics. So Sharon, I think no more questions, I think. Right.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you, Doctor. So before we end our slot tonight, I would like to show us about the uji program that we will conduct. Okay. So can you see my slide? Okay. So for your information, we have a next slot and about how to publish in high impact journal. So this is will be in 25 November. So this next week, Wednesday at 3 p.m. So free to join like this slot. And then we also have a feed the soul session. This is like a small group and like motivation and discuss about emotion like that lah, motivation. So this is weekly. So I think in registration form already asked about this. So our team will follow up for those who want to join. So and this is example our program, and this is which other country, and this is before this, and this is same also, and this is what we do hiking, and this is before. So okay, I think that's all that I want to inform. So once again, thank you, Dr. Prof. Chandrakantan,
Yeah, my
for
pleasure.
us tonight. Hopefully, we can organize and same or other program future, inshallah. So just that for tonight. So before we end, can we screenshot? So can others open camera? Open their camera? Yeah, I will capture. All right. It's mine. No need much, huh? Wait.
Saiful, any link for feedback form?
Yeah, we will provide in a Telegram group. Okay, ada? Wait. Let's see. Alright. 1, 2, 3. It's mine. 1, 2, 3. Okay, alright. So that's all. Thank you everyone for participation tonight. So I'm sorry if I have tersalah kata ke apa, minta maaf. Dan sama juga Prof minta maaf jika tersalah kata.
Kalau saya pun minta maaf jugalah kalau ada terlanjur kata.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Syarul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome. Good luck, guys. Okay, Syarul, thanks. Take care.
Good luck.
Bye-bye. Bye.
So that's why